You're welcome to the Policy Council. My name is Okwemi Agbaje. In this edition, we do a mini case study of a successful organizational transformation in the context of the Nigerian public sector. We don't have too many stories of such nature. But today, you listen to my guest and me go through the process by which a government organization was transformed. Enjoy the program. You're welcome back. It's the Policy Council. My guest today is the immediate past executive chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. She's a chartered accountant, a chartered tax practitioner. She used to be chief responsibility officer of a consulting company called Restral Limited. And then she left to work in the federal government as a member of the economic team and as executive chairman of our tax agency. Mrs. Ifweko Omogui Okaolu, I think I got it wrong. Ifweko, you said it was.
Ifweko.
Ifweko, you're welcome to the Policy Council.
Thank you.
I missed out the fact that you were a partner in Arthur Andersen. So you had this glittering career, if I may say, in the private sector, in consulting, in tax, in all of that. Did that background, was it an asset or a liability when you went into government?
Oh, most definitely an asset. Most definitely.
How did it help you?
I believe that, first of all, as a person, in whatever job you decide to do, it helps that you come to it with a certain level of competence. And that competence is built not by the school you attended. So it's not so much that I read accounting in the University of Lagos.
You had a first class in accounting?
Yes, I did. But not really that. It's more of the experience that you've gained, the people you've worked with, those that you've supervised with, the habits you have formed. And over time, that forms you as a person and then gives you a certain level of preparedness to do what you need to do. I believe if you add the cumulative experience I've had, also my school life, my school experience, my parental experience, my family experience, I believe it prepared me for the career I chose, which was not just about consulting. But I believe that what really makes me who I am is managing change, is being in a position to create an impact and to be able to do it with the sincerity that will help others understand that indeed you really mean to move an organization or a situation in a positive manner that will benefit not just the organization but benefit the individuals. And really at the end of the day, that's how I saw my job.
Describe for me, because you see it's often easy once a place has changed to forget what the original state was. So describe for me and for our viewers the conditions you met at the FIRS when you got there as executive chairman.
All right, I'd like to broaden it a little bit and talk about the environment of government, of the federal government. The president at the time wanted change. You recall in coming in, there was already an economic team in place, and the whole idea was to really reform the economy. That wanted change. Minister of Finance at the time, Dr. Kunje-Iweala, brought me to introduce me to the team. So that also showed that, look, I'm not coming alone. I'm coming with the support of the minister. I'm coming with the support of the president. People underestimate those little gestures. The other thing I met was what had happened before I came in. I had a predecessor who had started the changes. And I believe the Minister of Finance also had met a Minister of Finance, Madam Chiroma, who also had bought into those changes. So I met a trained...
An ongoing change process.
God bless you. I met a process that had started, a process that had led to a diagnostic of the tax system. So in terms of data, in terms of information, what you have, that had been done by my predecessor. So I had data, I had information, I had support, and then inside the FRS, I met a staff team, a management team that wanted change. And what you get from staff would be, I don't want to be associated with FRS. What you hear from staff was I hide my ID card when I'm outside. When anybody is talking about FRS, they don't want to be associated with it. So I met that too. I met a situation where, you know, roofs were caving in. You know, in offices, roofs were caving in, tax files littered all over the floor, no storage place for them, and these are supposed to be confidential files. You had a situation where funding was a major problem. Even if my predecessor wanted to do anything, there was no funding to do it. Some ministers before had also recognized the need for change. Chief Michael Ani, at the time, in his own way of addressing the problem, set up a performance bonus system whereby FRS customs based on revenue collection to at least help in shoring up the revenue. Even that was meant for the staff was being used to print tax clearance certificates, to print forms, to even pay for the work that you're supposed to be doing. So imagine a performance bonus that was meant for staff being used as overheads. So it was a pretty poor state, and there was no doubt that the president really needed change. The president had recognized that there was a need to diversify the revenue base, and recognized that in so doing, the Revenue Authority was key. And that's why he had recruited my predecessor. He had to go back to the banking industry by his own choice. And so that created another vacuum, and that's how I now came in.
Interesting. Let's take a short time out, and then we'll come back to this journey of transformation that happened at the Federal Inland Revenue Service. We'll be right back. You're welcome back, and I'm talking to Ifeeko Omogui Okaodo, immediate past executive chairman of the FIRS. Ifeeko, you've painted this picture of what you met at the FIRS, and it's clear from what you described that the organization needed change when you got there. How did you set about effecting that change?
I did what I believe any consultants will do. You need data. You also need to engage your staff, and you need to engage all stakeholders and have a plan. So for me, planning was key. A very clear plan, because it wasn't just about me. I needed to carry everybody along. And so therefore developing the plan for change was starting with the study group and the working group. Remember, we now have 2 diagnostic reports, so there was a need to harmonize and have a clear. So there was that effort going on. There was also the engagement of staff and management to understand from their point of view where we would. Now, the diagnostic was on the tax system, but I needed to know where the organization was. So there are a series of brainstorming sessions, within. To understand management, staff, and idea generation. Then, once we had pulled together a plan based on all this information, we now needed to go out and engage. So we had all the different stakeholders that we needed to relate to and tell them, this is our plan, what do you think? Engage them. So we went to, I believe, the National Assembly at the time. We talked to we're dealing with the committees of finance at the House and the Senate, so we engaged them. We engaged the permanent secretaries through the Office of the Head of the Civil Service. We engaged the Ministry of Finance. We engaged the Federal Civil Service Commission, because remember, one of the things we had in our plan was to be an autonomous agency, which meant we needed to be out of the civil service. So we went to the civil service to engage them. We went to the judiciary, again, to get their support. Again, recognizing it's an independent arm of government, but again, getting their inputs, because again, part of the things we wanted to do was enforcement of laws, and also to look at how we could put in place how the judiciary themselves could assist in the enforcement of laws. So we engaged them. We engaged the Joint Tax Board. As chairman of executive chairman of the Federal Revenue Service, I was also chairman of the Joint Tax Board. And whatever changes we needed to put in place, remember there are 2 levels of change. There's a change within the FRS, and there's a change at the tax system. So I was doing both. And the changes at the tax system could not be done just by the FRS without the Joint Tax Board. So we needed to engage the Joint Tax Board. So there was, those are some that I remember off the top of my head. So there was a lot of that engagement. So pulling all that together, we now requested for a presentation to the Federal Executive Council, which was the ultimate approving authority. And in making that request to the Federal Executive Council, the President did what I believe was, for me, again, another encouragement. And I keep on emphasizing this, because really the President is the chief tax collector. If the President doesn't support you, you can't succeed. So any success that I have is actually the success of the president. And what he did in requesting for that audience was he actually said, look, he wants to give tax its own priority. He now summoned a special Federal Executive Council purely focused on presenting the tax reform agenda. And there we now presented what we plan to do, got their buy-in, and because in what we plan to do, there was a level of administration, there was a level of legislation, there was a level of policy. And not just did we get the approval of the Federal Executive Council, we also got a presidential committee on tax bills set up, headed by the Attorney General, to drive the tax bills that were now developed. Another group that I didn't remember that we engaged was the National Economic Council, where you have
the state governors, and the vice president.
I mean, there were so many of such engagements that took place, but the whole idea was build buy-in, get everybody on board on an internally generated document that those within also bought. Have a clear plan of action, get approval, implement.
Okay, let's take another time out and we'll continue this discussion, fascinating discussion with Ifeeko Omoigui-Okauru. We'll be right back.
My name is Femi Durojayi. Welcome to the new Lagos, where things are improving every day. I work on the island and live on the mainland. But that's no longer a problem. With improved roads, I get to work faster. Sometimes I even leave my car and use the BRT bus, which is comfortable, fast, efficient, and reliable. After a hard day's work, the nights and evenings are even more fun. The streets are better lit, and the city is more secure. So I can catch my phone in peace. I pay my taxes because I want to continue enjoying the good things a big modern city like our Lagos brings. So it's my taxes that makes them real. Have you paid your tax?
Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back. It's still the Policy Council. I still have Ifeeko Omoigui-Okauru with me. We're talking tax reform in Nigeria. Ifeeko, so what challenges did you face? I mean, it sounds like an excellent story, engage with this, define this, but surely you faced some serious challenges.
Every day was a challenge. You know, there was, oh boy, so many different things all happening at the same time. First of all was getting the buy-in. There was also the challenge of, you recall we moved from a civil service to autonomous. So managing that transition. It occurred to us that, look, we need to do an exercise, we call it the placement assessment exercise, to properly place people. Because we felt that you are dealing with somebody who's been at a particular position for 5-10 years because there was no promotion, and you know you can operate higher. So there and then we said we're going to do placement assessment.
And that will be misinterpreted.
What are you telling me? Part of the placement assessment was you do exam. Problem. Madam wants to sack us. It was then I learned that exams mean sack. And I said, no, it's true. In fact, we had to have we ended up having a meeting where it was now agreed that no, there will be no exam. In fact, it watered down the placement assessment, but what they now agreed to was that, okay, we'll do external recruitment. But that was, believe me, a major challenge. And the interesting thing about it, when we now did the external recruitment, and the staff now felt a lot more confident that they could actually be more. They now came back, that placement assessment you did, I wish we did it. I said, but we've
gone beyond that.
I think we need to move on. So there were those challenges. Then there were the challenges of, okay, you say you start off with stakeholder engagement. There was no one we didn't engage. Then the law is passed. Then the real challenge of implementation starts. Because people didn't really believe. That's also something I learned. They didn't believe when we engaged.
All the time you are talking and saying.
Okay. So you engage and they say okay, but the okay is like it won't work. So when the law was now passed, pushback. Oh, these people are really going to be autonomous. Federal Civil Service was the one to hit us that law is illegal. Blah blah blah. We had to now manage that, write to the Attorney General, get the Attorney General. So for some time we're delayed in implementing the law because the Civil Service Commission said no, we couldn't implement the law. We finally got the go-ahead from the Attorney General before we could go ahead. There was also the pushback from staff. Prior to the passage of the law, to be appointed the executive chairman
didn't require Senate confirmation. I put in the Senate confirmation,
basically to note that, look, you need to be executive chairman for a period of time, but after that, it's good to get new ideas and so on. So when my renewal now came up, there's now a need for my confirmation to come in. My confirmation took 11 months. So that's a story for another day. But eventually, with the support of the president, and at that time, it started off with President Obasanjo, then it moved to President Yar'Adua. That also got approved. There are so many different challenges. But what I can tell you is that now it's all blurred. Okay, it's blurred because as you face the challenge, you surpass them. A new challenge will come, and then you surpass them. And I think the message for me from that is that you don't go into an organization not expecting challenges. You don't go into a change situation not expecting challenges. But ultimately, it's about how well you surpass the challenge and how you move on that enables you to take on new challenges and forget the past.
Okay, let's take a final time out, and I'll come back to discuss outcomes, results, some specific tax policies with Ifueko Omogui. We'll be right back.
Government wants our city to become a mega modern city. And so, government is providing modern markets for us to carry out our business. Now, this requires money. So, we need to pay our taxes to help government to help us. I pay my taxes. I hope you've paid yours. I pay. Pay your tax. It's your civic responsibility. It's your duty. It's the law.
You're welcome back to my final segment with Ifueko Omogui of CAUSU. Ifueko, there is a vexed issue I must ask you about, the problem of multiple taxation. You didn't solve that while at the FRS.
We tried, but we didn't. I must admit, it's one of the lists of unfinished business, and I do hope my successor will achieve a lot more success in that, and as in every other thing. Multiple taxation started before us. Even my predecessors tried to resolve it, and it's a problem. One thing I discovered with multiple taxation is not really just a taxation issue. There's also the issue of what do we even call multiple taxation. There's no agreement on that. You know, you discuss with the state government, and they tell you that they have a right to charge as many different levies, charges, taxes, whatever, as they could to raise revenue. You know, without it being regarded as multiple taxation. So we had to actually define it. Where it is within the purview of the state, and the responsibility now becomes that of the citizenry, working with the states to address the issue. Then there was the angle of the other side of multiple taxation, where for the same activity, the federal is taxing you, the state government is taxing you, and the local government is taxing you, and that is multiple taxation. Now, that definition of multiple taxation is what I would like to talk about, which is within the purview of policy. The other is within the purview of law, but I think again within the federal system is my constitutional issue. But clearly, the Constitution is very clear on this other aspect of multiple taxation, where you want to, like a telecom company would argue, you want to put a mast in place. You have environmental assessments. There's environmental assessment charged by the federal government. The state government will say you must do their own environmental assessment. They charge you. The local government says I was in my own territory. They charge you. And so we went a lot on that tax.
You also didn't solve the issue problem of VAT. You tried to raise VAT?
We tried to raise VAT because we truly believe, I still believe, that in the movement, which is a policy statement, from direct to indirect, first of all, we believe that the revenue generated today, the 5 trillion naira that was generated as of the time I was leaving, and 4.6 as the time leaving, and for about 5 trillion as of the end of last year.
What did you meet when you got there?
Less than a trillion. A trillion. Just around that. But don't quote me. Go check the figures. I may not. But in that 1 trillion ambit, it's not enough. I mean, we should be thinking of a 20 trillion revenue goal. Even if you look at what I'll call is a true benchmark of revenue performance, and that is tax to GDP ratio. The benchmark agreed at the Doha Convention for revenue generating countries was that no state, no nation state should generate less than 20% of their GDP.
Nigeria is
taxes
6% or something like that.
So we're still very low. Yeah, 5 trillion sounds like a large figure. Not just Nigeria, the whole West African, because when we were looking at the figures the other day, just 2 countries, Ghana and another, are over the 20%. So we're still very low. And when you look at 20%, you look at other countries and you compare ourselves, what is the contribution to this revenue? VAT is a major part of it. Nigeria is one of the lowest contributors, 5%. And why the shift from direct to indirect? It is easier
to collect.
Over time, research has shown that it's also a more progressive form of taxation because
it taxes consumption.
It taxes consumption, and it encourages savings.
But there are some things you did.
Yes.
In terms of outcomes. You would mention moving from 1 trillion about to 5 trillion.
Yes.
There were also changes. Can you tell us some other, the organizational changes?
Well, the structure was a major change. We moved from having different shops for you to get your tax. When I say shops, offices. So if you wanted withholding tax, you go to a withholding tax office. Remember those times? You wanted VAT, you go to a VAT office. You wanted to do company income tax, you go to a company income tax. So you wanted PA, you go to another. We consolidated all that. So that was at the office level. Then at the larger level, we moved from a focus on taxes to a functional focus. So at a customer market segmentation focus. So you had large taxpayers office, you had the medium taxpayers office, and now you have the small and micro tax offices. We instituted a performance management culture. And performance management not in terms of just the plan for it, not in terms of just setting the key performance indicators, but a reward for meeting the key performance indicators and a discipline to recognizing that if you meet your target, you will get a bonus. The other thing that I like to, that makes me very proud, in fact, of everything, I think the one that hits me the most, recall when I started, I said, what did I hear from staff? They said they were hiding their badges. As of the time I left,
people were happy to work at the FIRS.
People were happy to work. Up till now, people are still saying, how can I work in FIRS? So there was definitely something happened.
Something changed.
Between hiding your badge to now everyone
seeking
wanting
employment.
There must have been a lot that had created a new brand, a new image, a new profile, a new confidence in the people that worked in FIRS. I'm still talking about the people because that makes me very proud. I believe that I encourage a lot of people to now pursue higher education. In the process of the transition, we had a whole pool, I think close to over 2,000 people, if not more, who didn't have a degree certificate. And the kinds of changes that were putting in place meant a kind of staff with a kind of skill to do the kind of work that was done. So for you to transit, if you didn't have that skill.
So people had to get themselves better.
So we created a transitional pool. We also had policies to encourage them to go to school and say once you did that, you transited. We also encourage people to get professionally certified. And there was a reward for being professionally certified, because if you got a particular professional certification, you automatically move to a particular level. I believe that one way or the other, beyond the reward, an increase in salary, increase in remuneration that people got, was the increase in confidence in themselves. And for me, that's the greatest legacy I believe I could have given the service and the tax system.
Fueko Omogui, thank you very much for coming to the Policy Council. We'll be right back. I knew Fueko Omogui Okauru as a consultant with Anpa Anderson and Restaurant Limited. And so I have not personally not been surprised with the work that she has done at the FIRS. But the wider public policy lesson for Nigeria is that if we put competent people in the public sector, if we leverage the competencies that have been built up in the private sector, if we allow the right, as they say, the square pegs to go into the square holes, Nigeria can indeed be transformed. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.
again.